Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to sunny London. We're looking forward to another really exciting day here today. We don't have everyone joining us yet, but we'll make sure we'll get going now. We'll have any questions that anyone might have from yesterday's sessions. I'll go through what we're going to do for today's sessions, and then we'll kick off as usual with our speakers at 9 a.m. UK time. So we thought yesterday was a fantastic program. We loved how interactive everyone was. We thought that there were some brilliant questions. In terms of today's program, to make sure that the speakers start off their sessions by really understanding who's in the room and what your interests are, we're going to do a little round the room where we get all of the participating companies to briefly turn their camera on, introduce themselves and say what they're hoping to get out either of the session or out of the program as a whole. So what I will do at 9 when our speakers join us is call on you one by one. And when I call on you, if you could turn on your camera and unmute your microphone and just sort of 30 seconds about your company and what you're hoping to get out of it, that would be brilliant. So our sessions today are really focused on partnership and building your brand. So this morning's session is with Bridgepond, and I'll introduce Alan and Jim when they join us. And they have brilliant experience in how you partner with large companies, how you can best build that traction, so grow your sales base so that when you're expanding over here, you have that sort of financial base that will make you successful. And then our second session is about building your brand. So it's with CC Group, who actually do the PR for Newfound. So we think they're brilliant. And they have brought in a brilliant guest as well, who will be joining us for the second session today, talking about his experience working both with Newfound, but also across global companies to build profile and build a brand. And he's been with his current organization for over 6 years, so really has a sense of that brand journey from beginning to end. So that's to give you a sense of sort of what's happening today and the way that we'll run those sessions. Can I check if anyone has any questions? Just sort of turn your camera on and raise your hand so I can make sure if there's any questions that anyone has before we get started with the day. No? Everyone clear? Everyone good? Yes, great. Hi. Oh, you need to unmute. There we go. Hi.
It's okay.
Hi, John.
I think someone unmuted me just as I pressed the button and then double muted again. One of the questions that came up yesterday that I had a bit more of a think about was the answer on grants. Now, I don't know if whoever was answering it came across from the point of view of grants to actually move and expand into the UK, because we're talking about like export grants and R&D grants. But I did wonder whether there's more information on the kind of grants that are available, for example, like Innovate UK, and maybe related to the session yesterday in terms of how to actually structure your business in the UK to take full advantage of that.
Sure.
And then maybe the clash of that versus, like we talked about SACE and EIS and having, whether it's a subsidiary or an office or all of those type of things.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look through the guides that Uri Clark provided. I don't know if it's covered in any of those. It depends a bit, I guess, whether you're thinking about grants from Australia to help you move, or whether which is obviously sort of more of an Australian end conversation, probably one you should have with the team at JTSI and Wago, or if it's UK-based grants. And if it's UK-based grants, what I'll do is I'll get in touch with the team at Uri Clark from yesterday and email them together with you and say that you've got a couple of additional questions around those and how to best structure and think about accessing those grants. Yeah,
it's just to combine with that, like if you go with one certain structure, you may get access to something, and if you go with another structure, you might. So I wonder whether they had a sort of overall guide which would just say, this is like, if you go like this, you have access to these type of things, and if you get what I mean.
Yeah, perfect.
Really useful.
Perfect.
Thank you.
No problem, I'll pass that on. Does anyone else have any questions? We can see Alan and Jim have joined us.
Hi, Elizabeth.
We'll keep checking in with everyone before we get going with our session.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anyone else have anything that came up yesterday, or any questions about the documents that came through last night? No? Okay. And just a reminder, on the TAME platform, which all of you will have access to, there is a tab that says documents, that tab, for reasons best known to Tame, is not actually where you'll find the documents that I've sent through on email. So if you want to find the slides and the background associated with each of the sessions, you actually will find that in the virtual exhibition space. So if all of you log onto the Tame platform, you go to the virtual exhibition space, then you need to click on the company that's given that presentation or given that session. And within that virtual exhibition booth will be where you can find the contact details to reach out to people and ask them any questions you have, any follow-up, but is also where you'll find the slide decks, any additional information, the quick guides that were sent through by Ori Clark. So it's really a kind of treasure trove of information that you can go through at your own pace and access the things you need, download them when it suits you. But I'll continue to attach things to the roundup emails at the end of each day as well, so that you've got them there in your inbox. You will have all received last night as well the outline for Thursday's pitch session. We've thought about that order quite deliberately in terms of which order you'll be going in as companies, to sort of break up the funding, the people who have more funding decks and people who have more commercial sales decks, and people who are quite experienced at pitching and people who've had less experience with pitching. So do reach out to me if you have any questions about that order, but just to reassure you, we've thought about it and we're really making sure that it best reflects the stage that you're at on your journey and makes sure that the people on the panel will be able to give you the right advice. And I've also clicked through, I created the click-through links to LinkedIn, so you should be able now to have a kind of snip around, have a look at the people who'll be joining us for that session, and understand what sort of experience they have. And that might help you, particularly those of you who are just beginning your pitch journey. Understanding the background of the people who'll be on the panel will help you work out what questions and advice you want from them. So if you're going to sort of use it more as a structured feedback session rather than doing a full pitch, have a think about who's on the panel and the sort of advice that they'll be able to give you, and what questions you have around pitching, and particularly pitching in the UK, so that you're really prepared for that session. Brilliant. Well, in that case, I think we're sort of 4 minutes to go. But what we can start off by doing, Alan and Jim, as we discussed last night, we're going to go around the room and ask each of the companies to introduce themselves. And so you have a little bit of an idea sort of who they are. So we can do that as people start to join. So given that he's the top right in my deck, I will ask Dylan to come in and introduce yourself to Alan and Jim and talk about what you're hoping to get out.
Okay, maybe I should wait until Joshua joins. Is Joshua on the call yet?
On the call yet. I think if you just introduce yourself and then when Joshua...
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Dylan Reynolds. I grew up in Western Australia in Margaret River, and I studied space engineering at the University of Sydney. I'm now actually based in Bristol in the UK though, and I'm supporting Joshua with his Space Industries company. And Space Industries is aiming to create a company called Space Technologies here in the UK. And this is the main sort of reason that we're attending these calls, to structure and understand how to create that company in the UK with the best relationship with the Australian company. Brilliant.
I didn't realise you were just local, so it's a nice early start for you as well.
Good. Yeah, it's fine for me. And then helping Josh a little bit as well with the time difference too. So
yes, I think that's one of the things we'll all discover is the real challenge with this particular time zone, is the sort of, I woke up at 5:30 this morning to give a 6 a.m. lecture to my old school politics class. So the time difference some mornings is a bit of a killer. And then next on my list is Josephine. If you're there, Josephine, you can introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name's Josephine. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Noisy Guts. We use artificial intelligence to non-invasively diagnose and monitor common gut disorders, starting with irritable bowel syndrome, which is a chronic gut condition that affects 11% of the world's population. One of the things I'm really interested in today is brand awareness and market traction for a medtech company. So we obviously can't sell anything for the next 18 to 24 months until we get through the FDA, EU and TGA. So how do you build brand awareness and demonstrate product market fit when you can't actually sell your product.
Great, thanks Josephine. I will skip over Calypso and Charlotta because we know them. So then I next have Jess.
Hi, how are you going? I'm Jess, so I'm the co-founder of Mortgage Mates. So we are a platform that links two individuals who are currently priced out of the market to co-own a property together. So we have recently launched towards the end of the last year and about to launch our second version in the next week or so, which is exciting. I think the biggest thing I want to get out of today is definitely that brand awareness. As we are a two-sided market, it's something that we need to be able to grow quite quickly to get some traction on the platform. So any information in regards to that would be fantastic.
Brilliant, thanks Jess.
Thanks.
And next on my wall of doom is Chris Evans.
Good morning. So I am founder and CEO of Quipmo, which is a surf, bike and snow peer-to-peer gear rental marketplace. We have listings in 21 countries and a dozen major strategic partnerships around the world with world sporting tours and international, state and national peak sporting bodies across both able-bodied and adaptive sport. From the broader program, the thing that I'm seeking most is ideas in terms of how to access capital out of the UK and obviously the deeper capital markets of the UK and Europe. But specifically through this session, what I'm always interested in is less in terms of broader marketing and sales strategy, but particularly tactical, like really tactical opportunities and ways to acquire individual customers. You know, so very simple things that can be executed quickly and easily. So yeah, look forward to your thoughts and wisdom today.
Brilliant, thanks Chris.
Thank you.
Following up from that, I have Terry Jones.
Good morning, how are you going?
Hi, real well.
Good, just pull this up. Terry Jones, Managing Director of Credentia. What we are is a workplace, workforce identity and credential verification company. Enterprise level, we tend to work alongside systems like SAP, Workday, Salesforce at enterprise level. And what we do basically is we create a digitized workforce passport, if you will. And it's low cost, portable, can be used from site to site, gives virality and takes cost out of industry. I think what we're looking to do, we've already set up operations in the UK. We've been very lucky in that we were pulled into the UK through an old colleague group, which is the largest health and safety workforce group in the UK. They've got 35,000 companies and 1 million people that we're targeting to start to go forward with. We were supposed to go forward in February, but there was a little hiccup called the pandemic. So we're working on that. And I think what I'm really trying to do at this moment, because travel has been sort of halted. We were doing, myself and the Exco, we were basically flying over every 6 weeks doing a FIFO tech lifestyle, if you will. We're probably going to accelerate plans, put our team on the ground, country managers, and really, I think, just get an idea on what's available and setting up shop. We worked a little bit with DIT, and also funding's always a major thing. That's secondary for us at the moment, but certainly good to find out what has happened this side of the pandemic. I know there's a lot of things that have come available through, you know, some of the initiatives, the bounce back loans and things like that as well. So really just to get schooled up and to get some advice on what avenues to do to really set up bricks and mortar establishment in the UK.
Brilliant. So hopefully yesterday was really useful for you and your team.
It was, yes. Thank you.
Great. And then next I have Michael.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Zazzolo. I'm the co-founder and director of a company called SafeWatch Global. We build safety response and help apps across many different, I guess, verticals, from corporate to lone worker, schools, and also looking after mental health related issues in certain cases. we've been a company as a going concern for 4 years. We've scaled quite significantly in schools and here in Australia, well, here in Western Australia, and looking to expand more in Australia, but we're looking at also our opportunities over in other jurisdictions. UK is, we think, fairly similar in some regards in operation to Australia, as far as practical use of our products, not necessarily as far as business structure. What I'm looking to get out of it, and my business partner, is effectively strategies in relation to obviously funding and growth in that regard. And I guess in today's session, yeah, brand awareness and how to think of different ways of selling is something that is certainly of keen interest.
Brilliant. Thanks, Michael. Next, I have someone who's online as Revise Online. So you'll have to turn on your camera and microphone and reveal who is behind the Revise Online box. We've got possibly away from their desk. We'll move on then to Tony.
Am I all sorted? Yes.
Here you are.
Hi all. Tony Brockers from Accounts Flow. We have some software where we convert purchase orders and invoices into formats that can be downloaded into accounting systems. We mainly focus on the hotel and liquor market, and we focus a lot on the larger suppliers who enter in their invoices and purchase orders on a line-by-line basis. The main reason for this session for me and what I'm really trying to do is look at a reseller model and to look at how we can target the best way the suppliers in the liquor industry. We are from Perth and we launched in the US about 2 years ago. It took us 12 months to figure out that what we've got in Australia didn't work in the US, so we did a remodel of it all, and now it's really taking off. So we're looking at the UK. So that's really where I'm positioned.
Great, thanks, Tony. And hopefully this program means that you won't take 12 months to crack the UK market. You'll be able to crack it straight away.
I think we're lucky that it's pretty similar to the Australian market. So yeah, agree.
A lot closer. And now I can see the Revise Online team. If you can unmute yourselves and tell us what you're trying to get out of today.
Hi, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, we're Revise Online. We are an online revision platform for year 11 and 12 students. We started out here in WA and have sort of moved into other jurisdictions within Australia. Our key goals in sort of looking to expand into the UK is, first of all, understanding the landscape for the UK education system at the moment. There's obviously a lot of parallels there, but understanding the appetite for digital educational opportunities there. And sort of understanding, I suppose, the different strategies that can be involved. We've had some success and some failure here in using a bottom-up and then top-down approach going into schools. So yeah, understanding some key strategy around that, building a solid contact list as well. Obviously starting from scratch, it's going to be quite difficult. So the best way to find key decision makers.
Brilliant, thanks. And in fact, my Zoom this morning was with the Year 12 politics class at my old school in Melbourne, helping them revise for their politics exam, which is coming up. So I think they use some of your products. And then lucky last, we have Josh Letcher, who's in the room now. Josh, Dylan's already introduced himself and talked a bit about what you guys are up to, but if you just want to introduce yourself quickly.
So Josh, background in space or Earth resources and mining industry, and we're transitioning into the space industry with a focus on critical resources. So we're developing the Lunar Resource Extraction Vehicle, which will be able to produce water on the moon and also produce helium-3, which we don't have naturally on Earth here. In the process of this, we're looking at expanding into the UK, which we've actually already set up, incorporated in the UK, and we're looking at building some traction and networks and getting into some supply chains via the UK, as well as commercializing some products that we've developed for the space industry. Yeah, that's pretty much us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Josh. So that's all of us who are online at the moment. Other people can come in and join. And I will introduce our two fantastic speakers for today before I turn my camera off, and you'll be pleased to see the back of my face and my lovely Australian brooch, which I chose particularly for all of you this morning. So we have Alan Hamilton, who's the founder of Bridgepond. Alan really works with companies to sort of scale up companies, to help them build successful partnerships for growth, to help them think about client acquisition and how they expand their client network and their partnerships to really sort of supercharge their growth while expanding. And Jim Sykes, who is a director also from Bridgepond. Jim has an IT background, he's done a lot of work with tech companies, and he's really skilled in helping tech companies expand into new markets successfully. So I think Alan and Jim are a dream team, and I will leave it to them to get on.
Okay. Hi there, it's Alan here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Great, let's kick off. Well, it was great to hear from all of you. Some very interested and diverse businesses that you're bringing into the UK. It's going to be a challenge to directly address all of your issues and all of the things that you're concerned about in entering the new markets. I would like to cover a couple of things early, and that is, I am familiar with a number of the sectors that you're coming from. One of them in education, some tech, some marketplace types approaches to life. I've been involved with companies that do a number of those things through Bridgepond. And so I can get some very specific advice on some of those, but I'm going to take you through a story of A, where I've come from, and B, some of the major issues that you will deal with, and you'll have to imagine, if you will, some of the areas I talk about and try and relate them back to your sector, because there will be quite diverse here.
Alan,
yeah.
Alan, before we start, I think it would be very useful if we understand the sales strategies of each of the companies that we're talking to.
Okay. Well, I think I think we've went through an intro. It might take a while to get an understanding of everybody's sales strategy. I think the brand awareness theme seemed to come through pretty dominantly, and the areas for how you can build that in the UK. There's a lot of aspects of that you know, there's some very specific things you can do on that, but by and large, if you're taking time to build up your market, you must be doing a number of things and getting engaged with a number of organizations to support you building up your brand awareness. Also, then the marketplace scenario, you're also trying to build up two different sectors to bring them together to get critical mass. If you've already got critical mass in places like Australia and New Zealand and the Asia Pac region, then you can translate a lot of what you're doing over here. Yeah, I'm going to ask a few questions as we go through here, and I want you to think about them. I know you're curious, and if you weren't curious about entering the UK market, you wouldn't be in this market and be in this program today. So I'm assuming that you are. But I do want to explore some of the reasons why a lot of you might be hoping that there's a route one into getting success in the UK, and there isn't. But there is two ways of doing it, and a lot of it depends on how well you're funded and how you might approach things. So we'll compare things based on how you're funded and how you're not funded or looking for funding, and how you might then engage partners and how to win some deals in the sectors that you're in. I was born in the UK. I'm a Brit, but I moved to Canada when I was 10, and I grew up in Canada there. I then worked there and moved to London some 20 odd years ago. So I've been involved in going back and forth to North America, but I've also worked with other companies, including one in Wellington, New Zealand. I worked with a VC called Infrastructure Capital, who had invested in a company called Hyperbolics, and they were based in Wellington. And I, in fact, ended up bringing them and finding a launch pad for London for that company. We eventually merged it with another, and it was a little bit drawn out story. But I do remember going into a VC, another VC in the UK, to support getting some funding for them, and he looked at me and said, "You're telling me that you want me to fund a company called Hyperbolics?" And I said, well, we might have to think about changing the name. So we actually changed it to Superstructure. But it's there's a number of things that we've done that failed. I failed as much as I won in the successes that we've had. And I've actually taken Actuate, who was a North American company in the reporting space, and I took them into the UK. We've started up here. We had some success in the financial sector. One deals at Deutsche Bank, Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all in London, and built out that business. And we wrapped that up. And in fact, in a very timing is everything. In 3 years, we took it from zero to $19.5 million turnover in the third year. I've also worked with a company called Ecopos, who is a UK-based company that expanded from Wolverhampton. If you know the UK, Wolverhampton is nearly the middle of nowhere, but it's quite close to it. And we took them from where they were based there, moved into London, expanded into North America, set up a base in Boston, set up the whole new operation up there. And involved me being over there most of the time for the first year, and then setting up someone I trusted in the US to build that out. And there's some of the issues about your transition from one country to the other and what level of personal commitment you might need to make. It's something you need to consider seriously. So Equibus has been quite serious. We took them through a private equity round, and we eventually got a trade sale on that. So it's generally quite successful. On the back of that, I set up Bridgepond and started working with Jim to help other companies make that transition, either from North America to the UK, Asia Pac to the UK, or in fact, UK companies expanding into North America as well. So we've had quite a lot of experience across that piece. I'm going to ask you a couple of things about what you want to do. You have a comfort zone of what you're comfortable with, and if you're looking for external growth, you probably have a higher ambition than your capability, which is always a good thing. But you and your people in your organization will ultimately have a comfort zone of what you're happy with and what you're comfortable with. And as you set to build out market fit of your product within your market, and as you build up your operational readiness on the left axis, you'll build out and you'll have a comfort zone that you can drive. When you start thinking about moving into the UK, which is exactly the opposite end of the world from where you are, and the timings are brutal, you can suddenly realize that your ambition for where your comfort zone is suddenly a much smaller thing than when you're suddenly going for a global thing. So you really have to make sure that if you are expanding and you're doing it for the right reasons, and you're absolutely prepared to get out of your comfort zone, because all the influences, whether the market differences are great or not, they will be different, and your ambition must follow that. So it's something to think about when you're looking at what you're doing. It's just shown, this is just to say that the earlier you start expanding outside your own market, the higher the growth rate that you'll be. This is an extraction from a Deloitte report from a few years ago. And it just says that typically starting your export journey early will ultimately significantly increase your business potential. When you are coming into it, and this will apply to everything that you do, whether you're a marketplace, whether you're of individuals, B2C, or whether you're a B2B, you must look at the entire sector to understand which markets you're trying to address. And this one here is a little bit more B2B related. The top 20 global, if you're trying to sell to the top 20 global companies in the world, you really can't be doing that from a very small perspective. It's just too hard a journey. And the things that you'll have to be working with them are too challenging. So you really should be looking to get a global level partner to get into that. So those are typically not the first step journey for a startup or a scale up. Typically you'll be looking at maybe a tier 1 where you can sell in direct, or maybe your product can be OEM'd in a different fashion, a white label of what you do. Somebody else could take it to a completely different market. Might be for different languages, might be for different things. Or in tier 2 where you're looking at thousands of clients, corporate or otherwise, and you're now trying to get into a very larger number of that, and you being able to contact them directly without a partner will be challenged. Getting and working through vertical niche partners and other partners who are used to the reseller channel, then that's a better way of going. And if you're the tier 3, which is you're now deploying a SaaS solution, or your product is very much more B2C, then you will be actually controlling your operations, hopefully from where you are, where you base your development, and you'll be able to market across that. But that's where you now have to have much more market-led strategies rather than sales-led strategies to enter that market. The other one to think about in terms of what you should be doing with your business, these are probably the 7 key elements of what you are in your business. I'm assuming that you've invented something that you feel very clear and precise about, and you want to drive that market potential as high as possible. You must be the champion of that product and evolve that product and understand how it engages with clients and how to improve it through that. That's one thing that you simply can't outsource in a business, but you literally can outsource every other thing. And as you scale into new territories, you will have to outsource different elements of these pieces of your business. So think carefully about what the ones that you want to do, where you want to control, and what the ones that you're best using partners who have better local knowledge or better specific knowledge, such as in sales or marketing, to do so. But typically, the sales, the marketing, and the services piece are the ones that actually are the most likely that you will outsource when you get to new territories. But also, you know, depending on if it's a B2B, then support might be local as well. There's a lot of reasons not to expand to new territories, and a lot of reasons not to partner in doing where you're going. Because really, partnering is a fundamental piece of landing and expanding in the UK. If you do partner and you want to expand, then you will reach geographies without a presence. You will get into new markets where you lack maybe domain expertise. They're going to help you get into clients that you currently can't sell to. And as you increase your client base, whether it's direct or through partners, your client base will grow much faster in the partner model. The reasons maybe not to go into that is that every time you work with another partner, their interpretation of what you are and what you have is different. And they may be committing and getting into things that you may not choose to get into. You're going to have to, as you get to new market, and someone said that they took their model into the US and it took them a while to understand the product fit. That will take time to understand and do. But once you've understood that, you realize that your product is now, and I certainly hope that your single product can go anywhere rather than 2 versions of the same product, because that can be quite costly and challenging. And also, as you go into new markets, you're really going to have to depend on other people to maintain your quality standards. And ideally, if you're a startup and scaling up, partner with people who already have proven processes and methodologies that will engender in your business a higher level of quality for delivery. This is an example. Actually, I might pause for any questions. Is there any questions that people have right at the moment? Okay.
It's all gone very quiet.
Yeah.
Rather than ask questions, can we have any thoughts, comments on what you've said so far, please?
I'm thinking about go-to-market strategies. Okay.
Elizabeth?
I'm here. I think we just continue with the presentation. People are obviously kind of paying attention to it. So feel free, everyone knows if they want to ask a question, either they can type it in the chat box or they can turn their video on and raise their hand. So we'll continue with that and make sure you're engaging.
Okay. So there's a wide number of ways to enter a market, but ultimately what you should be doing in your current market at the moment, but also in the new market, is building out your ecosystem of partners and relationships. And these largely, this is a subset of the number of ones that you can actually set up, but this is actually the ones, it won't be relevant to you, but this is my actual Equipos ecosystem that we built over a few years that supported us going into North America. And it also was relevant to Upshot when we bought that from Wellington and renamed it, to coming into the UK. We did end up working with some big partners, some small partners, and a variety of other people out in the market that you need to contact with, especially if you're trying to build out your brand awareness and facilitate delivery. Okay. So, bear with me. Okay. So, global consultants are really a matured area where if you can get in with a global consultant who is bringing your product to market or endorsing your strategy for going to market, the leverage you get from that is massive. And when I'd taken Equipas into North America, we'd worked with a major bank. Accenture came along and had been doing a strategic review of the solution that the bank was providing. They picked up and started working with our product and saw an opportunity to deliver against that. We were both Microsoft based. They put us in with our Microsoft Development Center. They became a center of excellence. And Accenture then took us into two very large banks in the Boston area. In that year that we partnered with them, we nearly doubled again our revenue. And that drove at least 2 million of recurring revenue from what we were doing the previous year. So there is a time and a place to build out global consultants to get where you are. But we weren't ready for them when we first launched in Boston. So that took about 3 years to really get going. What we did was extremely effective. Was when we first went into Boston and when Upshot came into the UK, we worked with a number of niche consultants. These are the people who provide services to the market that you're going to and understand the key customer requirements. What they often do in a B2B environment is they deliver services around that, and quite often will recommend certain technologies over another, certain platforms over another that their clients may or may not need. You start working with these and they're looking for services. You can definitely work with them to drive that. And if you provide them with services, then they will often recommend you into the clients that they run. And so it'll definitely extend your market capability. Let me just go to, hang on here. The main reason that what they will do with the niche boutique consultants, they will help you sell, you give them services, and they will always be a strong advocate in influencing new sales as an impact on your business.
Alan, I think it's a really important point here for you all. If you have worked with partners, you'd understand this. If you haven't, I used to run a large partner organisation for a large corporation in Europe. The key that I said to all the partner managers was, you have to understand how the partner makes money out of the relationship. Of course, you will understand how you make money out of the relationship. If you don't understand what drives revenue for the partner, you won't help them succeed. If they don't see any revenue, after a couple of months, they'll stop working for you. So it's absolutely key that you understand how you drive their revenue.
And in a B2C world, or in a marketplace platform type solutions, there will be partners who will help you get to one or more of the constituent players in your marketplace, and leverage them as much as possible to find them. And certainly in the early stages, you will try to ramp up customers in one end or suppliers in another. Do whatever you can to make sure the partners are making money in the process of you ramping up your business on that. The more money they make, the more successful you will be made, or more successful your business will be. And they will always have a way of getting to their clients faster, and that they will bring and build that out your partner awareness or your client awareness as much as possible. You're also probably going to be working with some technology partners. With Equipas, we worked with Microsoft very closely, and a lot of our clients obviously had Microsoft infrastructure in where they were doing. So we're going into the finance sector. Microsoft is a technology relationship, but it's actually a marketing relationship more than anything else. If you choose Microsoft, AWS, Salesforce, whichever platforms you're going to choose to get into and get to market or deliver your solution, understand that their energy and their power is not in the technology, it's in their marketing presence, and they will leverage as much as possible, allow them to leverage you into that sector. It takes a fairly committed resource to work with technology partners. You must have a strong technical relationship with them, but then on the back of that, you build a commercial relationship with them. And that's really how you will leverage. Ultimately, when Microsoft realized we were having success in the financial sector, in the back office systems, Microsoft was very good at the front office systems. They started leveraging us into new clients, and they had very high presence in some really big banks. And they give us introductions that allowed us to get into those banks. So, technology partners can be go-to-market partners as much as anything else. We look at market analysts, and we had Gartner selling. Gartner's got the magic quadrant that they have for every of their major technology developers around the world. So they're quite often too big for startups. And we did have an experience with Gartner that was, we weren't big enough to really be serviced properly by Gartner, and it costs us a lot of money to not get a lot of value. But once you've scaled up, they then come in play, and they can validate you as a market player in any sector that you're in. But the others like Celent, IT, Tower Group, and others, they all reviewed they had a client base that was in our sector, and they provided advice on technology to that sector. So I spent, every time I went to Boston, I used to spend, at least once every 6 months, have a meeting, have a coffee with people in all the other groups that were based there and across the piece, and understood what their thinking was in the markets that we were in. We generally told them what we were up to date. They'd like to hear that. And we also found out where they thought the market drivers were in the area that we were in. They then went out and they quite often recognized that. I mean, Tower Group introduced us to one of our first clients in Toronto, and Qatar introduced us to one of our first clients in Boston. So the market analysts, I would also, this in the marketplace and other areas, influencers are the same. Influencers will give you and provide the same kind of connectivity that you can get to understand how to get to the same markets and build out those relationships and keep them close. Again, from a thought leadership perspective, brand awareness, if you're taking a strategy of building out your brand, you're developing an inbound marketing strategy to get to where you're going, and building that in your home location or another market, you really are, and you almost all will be out there anyway, doing the social media efforts, driving thought pieces, getting other people to write pieces for you, or at least comment on your pieces, driving that. I'm not today going to tell you build out the whole what to do in the social media world. That's probably not my specific domain, but I would say that build out partnerships to help you create the content and the kind of reputation that you need to have, so that others will see you being out there, and that will obviously attract interest to you. And anything you've done anywhere in the world, whether it's your home territory or others, it's all relevant. It becomes more relevant when you have domestic client references, but anything you've done or any experiences you've had where you are, expose that. It won't be as much different. The differences from the Australian and New Zealand market to the UK market is very small in that regard. I think we've become a global community, to be honest, in the world of brand awareness. I've always said that anytime you can find an award, and everybody's giving out awards for all numbers of reasons, if you can get an award, get one, you then become an award-winning company. It then also gives you, everyone within your business, an understanding that you are better than anybody else in a certain aspect. It's odd that winning awards is more about writing well than it is doing well. But you still have to have shown that you're having a presence in the market, and you also have to show that you know how to fill in a form that says I'm applying for an award. So if you're not very good at doing that, get somebody in to help you write these award applications, because that will be a great way and a relatively low-cost way of building your brand. We then get to the media, and this is not the social media per se, but this is that in any given sector that you're in, there is enough journals, online forums, online information resources, people who are advising, or everything from recruitment gossip lines to the technology reviewers to anybody in the market. You need to spend a lot of time with them, and the more face time you can spend with them, oddly enough, the better you can get to know them, the better that they can understand what you do, and you actually work with them to really get to the heart of what your proposition is and drive the PR as much as possible. You don't have to sign up a PR agency to begin with, but as soon as you can get a budget to go into a market, it's one of the first investments you should make. If you've got a very strong PR capability in-house, then do it yourself. If you don't, then you absolutely must get some help in getting some PR in. There'll be more work on that, and there's more programs on that following this session here. But I would just say, from a market entry perspective, PR is the lowest cost way of you getting some brand awareness. This is a checklist to look at yourself to decide whether you're going to enter a market. You're going to, if you're well funded, if you have the ability to expand with funding, you should go as direct as possible and come over and be here and exist, and then build your partner network from here. If you don't have that funding, then you may have to build out your remote capability and your presence in this market by partnering with people who are already here and are local to the market that we are in right now. So look at yourself and understand. If you're self-funded or you have investors, but if you have investors, make sure that they're on board with an ambition to help you expand. And if that's the case, then you have to make a personal commitment to get over here, or one of the key executive directors in your company should be having a presence here on a regular basis. That's the best way to actually get your base on the ground, but you'll still have to use partners because you won't be here all the time. If you are resource bound, and that resource bound and funding bound is pretty much the same question, but if you really are committed, if the execs in your business are committed to doing the things you're doing in your home market, then you better get a partner over here to leverage what you can do. And that will be a more challenging relationship, but it still is the better way to go if you don't have any resource or can't come over here. If you have a big issue about doing everything yourself and controlling, then there'll be a challenge in how you will enter a global market. But the best way to have control and drive what you do and carry your mission forward, if you're going to do that, then get into this market and have a presence here yourself. And literally, if you have to move here for half the year, that is possibly what you need to do. And if you're entering Europe through the UK, be here. If you're entering the US or Canada, it'd be the same thing going over there. But you have to have a pretty solid commitment to expand in those markets. But coming from where you are, this will massively change what your business looks like by doing that. So just some of the steps that you look. If you start looking at your objectives, if you're talking about brand awareness, building out some things, fine, understand that, and now think about which partners can help you do that particularly. Then look at whether you want to come direct or whether you want to work with partners to do any specific things. You've probably got your proposition to your end user clients or your marketplace or other clients worked out, but what is your proposition to your partner? As Jim said, if they want to bring you to market, they both have to have a win-win relationship in bringing that to the market. So make sure you understand how that relationship will go. And then if you're looking at building that relationship, making sure that they know what they're doing and they understand what they're doing, especially if it's a remote relationship from where you are to somewhere else. Understanding ownership is critical of the process and managing the responsibilities and being accountable for that. And then going through the process with the partner of measuring what they do, feeding back, and then corrections and adjustments, because it will always take adjustments. You have an adjustment to get to your product fit. You have an adjustment to get to your market entry process. So I think in summary, new market entry is time consuming and it's a challenge, but there's a finite risk of the time and effort that you will put in to make it successful. In particular, sales, marketing, and delivery partnerships in a B2B world, or sales and marketing in a platform or other B2C world are critical, and you must build them out, and the partnership model, the way you execute that, is critical to reduce the risk of the process. And building out an ecosystem takes a long time, and some of the big ones that do take a long time, something that says if it's going to take a long time, then you better start early. So don't put off the long time things, delay them, start them in the little small steps while you're doing everything else. And before you know it, a year goes by and another year goes by. And if you've been building those relationships, suddenly in the third year, they come to fruition at the right time. So if you understand all the things you can do a little bit of them early as much as you can. And I would always say through the organizations like Newfound, Bridgepond, and many other organizations in the UK that can help, we are here to give local guidance to reduce the time and your risk of the market entry. That's the formal piece. Is there any questions or any comments?
Thanks, Alan. I might kick off the questions whilst our online listeners get ready and have a think about what they're interested in. I would be really interested in your thoughts about UK specific tips for market entry. So one of the things that a lot of the companies as they introduced themselves today were thinking about was how to sort of build a network in the UK. It's really difficult at the moment with the inability to travel and needing to do everything remotely. Do you have any thoughts specifically on how people build networks here in the UK and how they should find the right people to approach and talk to? And should that be on LinkedIn? Should it be cold calling? Sort of what works in that setting?
Sure. I'm kind of, you know, if you have a very clear idea who you need to get to, then you quite often, you know, the LinkedIn model actually works pretty well here. In general, globally, LinkedIn is it's really becoming more of a recruitment platform than anything else. But if you've got, you know, over 1,000 or 2,000 type contacts in a LinkedIn model, you suddenly have a way of getting to any person that you need to get to. And, you know, building relationships through the LinkedIn model. You'll all know this. If you haven't used LinkedIn, or you're in other areas where LinkedIn is a bit less critical, I'd be surprised. But certainly LinkedIn is a model. There are certain organizations that are set up. I know certainly if you were in the fintech space and you were selling into the UK, then Level 39 would be a logical place to go hang out, whether virtually or directly, and see the organizations that are existing in Level 39. For those you don't know, is a startup hub for fintech startups, and it's based in Canary Wharf in London. And just hanging out there, having coffee, speaking to people, understanding who else is in the ecosystem that you're in, and understanding either technology partners or adjacent technologies that fit with what you do. You know, if you're into invoice processing, there's a number of organizations that are in payment processing and in ERP or all the other processes that organizations develop. There are places to go to hang out with them to understand where that is. And I would be, you know, I think I've found that when you're entering a new market, you do so much remotely that everyone's come into the zone where COVID is driving us to be more adaptable at being remote. And I think that's to the benefit of you coming in from another location, especially when there's a large time difference. So you can gain a lot. I mean, prior to actually setting foot in the country, you can spend a lot of time building that out. Because the set of companies here is so broad and so diverse, it's hard to say on any one silver bullet. But really, the other big thing in LinkedIn that I've always felt, and even in Facebook, depending on your market, is these vertical groups that are in there. If you start vlogging or blogging within those, if you starting to put some thought pieces in the target areas for them, then that definitely works. And that's probably a single brand development strategy that I would probably work with.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. I would add to that, certainly from my experience, sort of building businesses here in the UK and moving into the UK, there is a slight difference that as Australians we need to think about coming into a UK setting. So I remember one of my very first performance reviews in the UK, my very British boss said that I was a breath of fresh air. And I thought, great, what a wonderful piece of feedback. What he meant by that was that I was very loud and quite bossy. So understanding those sort of UKisms and thinking about how you present yourselves, generally, you know, Mike and Charlotte will definitely agree with this, I'm sure, that Australians are incredibly well regarded here in the UK. People think that we're go-get-em, we're really hardworking, we're very sort of proactive and ambitious, and they love that. But you do sometimes need to think about when you're partnering with a UK business, sometimes you will push much harder and faster than they're sort of used to. So you need to sort of have that push-pull when thinking about building that relationship. And I can see Josephine has a question. And the other piece of advice I'd give in terms of finding partners is, because the UK market is so big and so diverse and so sort of specialized, you'll find there are lots of interest groups that you can join. So there will be a chamber of commerce that specifically covers your industry, or there will be a lobby group. So there's a higher education organization that you can sort of partner with and join. There will be one that's specifically around space. So I would spend a bit of time as well sort of understanding what the membership organizations are in your industry, because that can be a really quick and easy way to sort of turbocharge your entry. So you can join up to one of these organizations and sort of pay the membership fee, and then that will give you introductions to a whole lot of other people working in your space. And because those introductions are being made by a trusted partner for that other organization, it can help you link up much more quickly. So there's obviously the Australia UK Chamber of Commerce, who are based in the High Commission, who Mike and Charlotta and I know well and work with quite closely. But there are then specifically British ones covering a lot of industries. So that's something to think about as well on the example of sort of level 39 and fintechs. So Alan and Jim, we have a question from Josephine about how do you avoid being in a sort of permanent pilot position? So when you go into a market, people sort of say, oh, great if you could pilot this thing. But how and when do you actually start monetizing something rather than constantly being in that pilot setting?
So the question I would ask Josephine is it a paid pilot?
Josephine, do you want to jump in and answer whether or not it's paid?
Oops, sorry, my video's off again. Very rarely in med tech. So yeah, typically it's not.
Okay.
But it would be a way of developing clinical partnerships, you know, as you were talking about, Alan, thought leaders, so getting some key gastroenterologists on side. But it would be basically redoing a clinical trial that we've already done in Australia in a bigger market.
Okay, as it happens, one of my best friends, Mark Smith, he works in the NHS, not in the NHS. He works with some of the startup and funding organizations that surround the NHS. And when I mentioned I'd be doing this this session, he did say that, in fact, he knew a number of companies that are doing trials with the NHS. Dealing with the NHS is probably the hardest thing you're ever going to do. And so you better get a lot of help in doing that and understand how long it will take. There are more easy things to do to get market presence. I could certainly make an introduction to you on that, because he actually already knows that there's a different form of technology or process, but there's already, NHS have already trialed an IBS type product. So there is possibility for trialing, but I'll be honest, if you're getting into the medical sector and you do want to sell to the NHS because it's such a monolithic model, you better go get a lot more money.
Sure.
You know, otherwise you could end up burning everything you have, not getting to critical mass.
Yeah.
And it might well be that, you know, the NHS will take a long time. So do all the baby steps you have to do to get into them. And absolutely be networking, and I can introduce you to Mark, and he could point you to all the shortcuts and all the things that you shouldn't do. In fact, he's probably got a couple of links that I could send you as well and refer you to him. So it's the things not to do when you're trying to get into the NHS, and things that you must do. And the trial process is, don't get stuck in a long trial, by the way.
Yeah.
But
okay.
but unless they validated it, they won't accept it. So you've got that chicken and egg. I wish I could say I've answered your question, but I can at least give you more people to talk to.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, do you have anything to add in that?
No. Alan's got this connection into the NHS. I personally never dealt with the NHS, so can't add value, I'm afraid.
Apart from as a patient, possibly.
Too many times, Elizabeth, too many times.
Do we have any other questions in the room? Dylan, great. Do you want to, Dylan, I'm happy for people just to turn their mics on and ask them sort of in person.
Yeah, okay. So there's kind of like a general question here and then a few sort of specific aspects, but you showed all of the different partnerships that you would propose to create. I think in different ones, you probably want to have different protection mechanisms.
Yeah.
One that I was thinking about was you were talking about going and partnering with tech, for example, someone like Microsoft or AWS. How do you stop them from actually taking over your product or copying your product? Obviously, there's some of the standard things like intellectual property, but particularly in certain industries, that's not so easy that they can take a different version of what you're doing, essentially. Do you trust them, or is there something that you specifically would advise? And then also at a different level with the consultants aspect. So if you're working with them, it's a little bit similar to the last question. How do you get the traction with the consultant in a way? Do you always propose to sell it to them, or do you go hunting together almost for those bigger customers that would serve both of you?
Well, particularly with consultants, if you're a product-based company and you want to work with consultants, you both have a way of getting revenue from the client, and they will deliver services, implementation services typically, and you will provide the product on which they deliver that. So you both have an interest. They're out there looking for things that you have to bring into their clients. That's how they make their money. So there will be a natural interest in them. So certainly, pitch well on your product and assume that they can support that. But be clear that they need to make money out of the deal. If there isn't a lot of services or things that they provide to get into your end client, then they won't help you much. The other piece about trusting, you'll never get a VC to sign a non-disclosure because they won't get in. They get involved in things. Equally, Microsoft, they have less fear of what they might do to compete against you. The skates on that you will get, the leverage you will get from working with them to accelerate it is much better than the worry that you have about that. The biggest worry you might have is that they might end up acquiring you, because they acquire more than they develop. So, working with them, consider them a potential exit. But it's not all, it's usually, it won't be them eventually. They do acquire, but it probably won't be them. But they're more likely to acquire you than copy you. And in fact, it'll be other companies that'll be looking at the same niche as you that will be competing. So, get your leverage in the market as fast as possible and use them to do that, and worry less about the copy piece.
Can I just add to that about the consultants? I think it's absolutely critical that once you've picked the consultant you want to work with, and they understand how they're going to make money out of you, I've always sat down and done a sales strategy with them, always a joint sales strategy, to understand what they're going to do, what we're going to do. Because if you go and sell, you're dragging them into it and they make revenue out of it. If they're going to sell, vice versa. So I think it's absolutely critical that you understand their sales strategy. Whenever I've done that, it's always worked really, really well, and we've both made lots of money out of it.
Great, thanks, Jim. And I think Calypso is going to also join in and give some of her thoughts, which is fantastic.
Hello, everyone. I just thought I'd weigh in on this conversation because we've helped a couple of health tech startups, come into the UK, and so just in relation to kind of noisy guts and looking at that as an option, but it's also relevant, to everyone on this call. I think what's important is to consider partnerships as one route to market, and actually doing your kind of market research and really understanding the different channels that are available to you to set up. Partnerships should be one consideration, and quite good to look at that and potential JVs when we have the situation that we're in, because essentially as Bridgepond were talking about earlier, it's about expanding your presence, but making sure there's the right incentives as well, and really doing your research on those particular partners, on their financial background, their trading history, understanding who their customers are, getting those points of references, making sure that they're a good representation of you in market. This is really relevant. You'll find with the larger players, like they were alluding to before with AWS and Microsoft, they're extremely litigious, and they will have no qualms about putting a huge agreement in front of you to sign. Don't be afraid about protecting your interests. Get the right legal advice. People expect it in order to do business in the UK. In New Zealand and Australia, in the Antipodes, we have a wonderful trust, and we do things on a handshake. Not to say that we don't do things like that here in the UK, but agreements are expected, so bear that in mind and make sure that you get the proper legal advice to protect your interests and make sure that you have a solid agreement in place. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that, Calypso. I've become, with the number of deals that I've done with large organizations, I've become pretty much conversant with most legal requirements and now use a lawyer to double check some of the things I do. That seems a bit obsessive given that I started off as a techie, became a very strong salesperson, and then elevated up. But the deal, the contract is everything. The contract will tell you what kind of relationship you have with an organization. And it's easy to get caught out. We've missed some glaring things in some contracts that I didn't realize were in them because I didn't double check enough, and you know, legal might miss them as well. So she's absolutely right. Good legal contracts are fundamental. Britain has a rule of law, and the contract is fundamental to that. And you'll find the same thing in North America. So, you know, really, the contract is absolutely critical, and be good at them.
One thing I'll add on that, which is kind of directly relevant to Australian companies, is there is a lot of commonality between UK and Australia law. So you will find that your contracts will map across. So so that's really quite helpful, and you know, you're not going to have to do a huge amount of re-engineering, but don't think that your Australian contracts are going to hold, you know, in jurisdiction in UK. You are going to need kind of UK specific kind of contracts.
The one final thing to put on that is that in every contract, the recourse of where there's a difference will go to one jurisdiction or another. If you start the contract, always put in your local jurisdiction where you have most control, and you'll spend more time. In other contracts, you'll just have to accept that it'll be in the UK. But if you can set it up with a you know, a domestic contract where the rule of law goes there, that's better if you can, but accept that you won't be able to most of the time.
And certainly, I think in my experience, there are lots and lots of Australian lawyers here in the UK. So not only are the legal systems very similar, you'll hear similar accents who'll be able to guide you through that process as well. We've got a great question from Josh, who is from Space Industries, and they're thinking about using an accelerator or an incubator to give them an immediate network as they launch here in the UK. Is that a good strategy? Are there other ones they should consider?
I think it's an excellent strategy, but there are so many accelerators, so many organizations out there that are part of the ecosystem of bringing startups into the world. I've worked with, I'm chairman of a company called Ultra Education. We teach entrepreneurship to children between 8 and 14. And they've spun out developed an app that does this called Ask Ultra. I was supporting Julian, who runs that business, and he went through an accelerator. And it took some level of commitment. The last one we did, it was a virtual accelerator. We met on Monday nights, and we went through that. We got a mentor as part of that process with it, who was massively useful. We had presentations very much like this, very vertically focused in where we are about accelerating. They will cover a lot of things you've probably been covering. However, what you want to get out of them is access to investors and access to the influencers. That's exactly what they will bring. Some are better than others. If you're looking at some of the things, some of the accelerators in the UK that you might go for in your vertical, I know quite a lot of people who do things in accelerators and could maybe give you some advice on that too. But yes, just be wary that they do take some of your time up, and that is a requirement.
Great, and I think Charlotta had a question as well. Charlotta, you can turn your camera and mic on and ask it in person.
Great. Hi, Jim. Hi, Alan. I work for the Government of Western Australia.
Great.
Trade and Investment Office in London. Okay. I have a question now, which is maybe very tricky to answer, but how do you judge the best partners remotely now during COVID times?
It's a challenge. It truly is. It's much harder now than, say, 10 years ago when you were going into new territory. The lack of information that you had was just enormous. The wealth of information you have now is quite good. Some of the critical aspects are, and Jim can talk about this, the way they talk about the partnership is a good indicator of how they view things. While at one level, a partnership's only good if both people are successful in it. Their ability to understand what you're trying to do and interest in what you're doing is critical. And so they need to, a good partner needs to understand your mission, but equally you have to invest in time to understand what they're trying to do. So, you know, asking more questions, some very obvious things. It's almost like, you know, how do you sell into or how do you buy things? You have to just get to know things better. You don't, partnerships build, you don't suddenly go find one and click it up and off it goes. They build over time. I'm not a big fan of trial periods per se. You should, a trial period is to work with someone is to make sure that there isn't something you haven't seen before. But even if everything, you should get going things on a trial period where the commitment isn't too high, and that if you have to change after a few months, you're able to. But don't use that as a way of filtering them. Do more due diligence on what they're doing. I think the other thing is you have to build out your network and get recommendations. I can't just going back to the accelerator piece. Hugo Drayton, who was the accelerator for Julian, and when I was involved working with him, he was a great sounding board, and his connections really influenced how we got things done. And personal references for people are critical. And so, you know, the relationship, getting a referral, and this won't be news to you because you've been doing that in your own markets already. But if you happen to be, for instance, a very strong techie who hasn't been in the world of the partnering and the marketing and everything else, build out good relationships with key people and then work their relationships and be very specific. Quite often, if you put a list of things you need on a piece of paper and tell people this is what you need, or if you're looking to build out your team and you write up your org chart and put the spaces where you need them, quite often if you do that, the universe contrives to help you fill those if you take the right attitude. And it might sound a little bit too mystic, but in fact what happens is that the minute you're clear about what you need and tell people what you need, the people will respond to that and provide that. And in the UK in particular, I find people very generous with their references. They enjoy giving references. It adds value to what they are. So asking people for references and asking, you know, going direct is the best way. And then you'll get, then they'll have a stake in the success of that relationship because they've referred you. So
I think I would add, Charles, is that when you're looking for a partner, understand what are your objectives with that partner. And you'll have measurement criteria so that you can then start to judge what those which of those partners excel in the particular areas. The other thing that I would stress, and Alan did raise this in the presentation, is you should constantly measure them and reassess and keep on assessing, because we do that subconsciously, but we've got to keep on doing that with the partners. Are they stepping up to what you want them to do? And it's not them and us. You work with them. You help them succeed. You don't step back and let them fail. It's absolutely critical. I've seen far too many companies go, oh, that partner's failed. And so, well, you know, what have you done for them? How have you helped them? So you help, you know, make them succeed. If they're then not succeeding, you know it's their fault and not yours. Does that answer your question?
Right, thank you.
one other thing I would add to that is that market entry is a process. It isn't hiring somebody in the location and hoping that they can do everything they need to do to ramp up your business. It's a process. So, you know, Newfound, I believe, have a very good model, and we dovetail with Bridgepond dovetail with that in terms of how to get into a market, how to understand a market and build out, test your proposition as early as possible. Because that will be the thing that helps you build that out. Partners will help you test it, exposing what your proposition is and asking them, is this relevant? And getting feedback as early as possible about how relevant your proposition is in the market you're in. Don't be afraid of the hard questions, because the sooner you learn, it's either works or it doesn't, the better.
I would agree with all of that. I think particularly I would echo this idea. I can see Josh has a question. I would echo this idea that people in the UK are much more generous with their networks than I think you would expect, given what a large country it is and given how sort of busy everyone is all the time. Sort of, everyone likes to think that they're the busiest person in the world, but lots of people here do spend a huge amount of time at work and commuting. But when I first arrived in the UK 5 years ago, I got my first job through someone that I hadn't seen in 6 years, introducing me to someone else who he thought would be a really good contact for me. So going out into the UK market and basically getting in touch with anyone you know who's working over here or living over here and saying, this is what I'm looking for. Is there anyone in your network that does that? Or do you know someone who might know someone? And people here have been incredibly generous with their time and their connections, and take advantage of all of the great speakers you're meeting through this program. So I know Alan and Jim would say, please email them, ask them for recommendations or connections. I know that Francois would say that too, and Jeremy, who's speaking to us tomorrow, and Chloe and Duncan at CC Group. So given that it's hard to get in a plane and build those personal connections at the moment, really take advantage of the network that we're creating together this week to get those introductions. Josh.
I just wanted to go over the strategy that we're using, for our business model, and to see if you have any input on potential customers, potential partners that you think might be suitable within the UK for us to focus towards. So basically, our business is quite long lead times on the development of the technology, so similar to medtech. So we're looking at 3 years development time. Over the course of that development time, we do offtake agreements. So it's if we produce it, they will buy it with the customers. So we're securing those. Even now, we're already in discussions securing some. So the other thing with the industry, it's quite large dollar figures. So say $50 million for development of the first vehicle to get launched to space. But the offtake agreements, the first two is say $600 million. So I'm just wondering if you can suggest any of the potentials that we should focus towards, or if you think there's none in the UK that could support or partner with us.
I think, they generally are really large numbers for very big imaginative things, and I have a high regard for your ambition, I really do. The research and development bodies are a good place to start, because they're the hubs that most of this work hasn't been funded. It's usually a collaboration of government and private industry that's collaborating to develop this. Innovate UK and other organizations attract those same kind of partnerships, and they strongly encourage partnerships. So whether you have an established entity right here, or if you don't, then find somebody who has an entity here that can be a leader, a partner for a development. You might also look at universities, because some of them are out there in terms of the things they get funded, and Innovate UK quite often, if you have an academic partner, they will support that. But you won't get that much money out of Innovate UK, but what you will get is the relationships and other people who are going there.
Great, thanks.
Jim, did you have anything to add to that?
No.
Not an experience in space at the moment.
No, I'm not. No.
Maybe you and Josh and Dylan can work together.
It'd be fascinating.
Unless anyone has any last minute questions, we can wrap this session up. For the next session, which is really focused on PR and branding, we'll do the introductions again, but so that we don't all get bored of introducing ourselves to each other, I'll ask you in the next session to focus really specifically on one thing you want to get out of the branding piece with Duncan and Chloe and Patrick, so that they know exactly how to target their approach. They will also have, like Alan and Jim did, they'll have some breakpoints in their presentation for questions, but we'll also keep the sidebar open so you can keep putting those questions in and sending them through, and I can moderate that as we go. Thank you all for your attendance and for coming in. We'll be back online in about 23 minutes for the next session.
Elizabeth, can I just say, if anyone's got any questions that they think of later, please don't hesitate to contact Alan or I. We're here to help you.
Our network is your network.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, guys. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.